In the spring of 1943, the skies over Europe were a slaughterhouse disguised as strategy. The United States 8th Air Force had thrown its weight into the daylight bombing campaign, convinced that precision strikes would cripple the Nazi war machine without the carpet chaos of night raids. B-17s and B-24s, those iron-bellied giants, droned out from East Anglia's muddy fields, loaded with 4,000-pound bombs and the fragile hope of American industry. But hope was a luxury the Luftwaffe didn't allow. The doctrine was ironclad. Escorts flew high and wide. P-47 Thunderbolts and P-38 Lightnings orbited at 25,000 feet, scanning for interceptors in rigid, predictable boxes. Formations born in pre-war parades, not the meat grinder of combat. Command insisted it maximized air superiority. Spot the enemy early, engage on your terms. But the Germans weren't playing by American rules. JG-2 and JG-26, the Jagdgeschwader aces, sliced through those wide lanes like wolves through sheep pens. They'd wait until the bombers tightened for the IP, the initial point, then strike from the sun, vectoring in on radio intercepts, picking off stragglers with 20mm cannon fire that turned aluminum to confetti. By March, losses were hemorrhaging. A single raid to Wilhelmshaven cost 67 bombers, nearly a third of the force. Crews returned silent, faces smeared with cordite, eyes hollow from watching friends spiral into the channel. In the Nissen huts of Thorpe Abbots, ground crews tallied the wreckage, wings sheared clean, fuselages riddled like Swiss cheese. The brass called it acceptable attrition. The pilots called it murder. Enter Major Alan Hawk Reynolds. Transferred from the RAF's 71st Eagle Squadron after America's entry, Reynolds was a ghost in the machine. A 32-year-old Texan with a drawl like gravel and eyes that burned from too many dawn patrols over Dunkirk. He'd flown Spitfires in the Battle of Britain, watching Hurricane pilots burn while adhering to proper climbing turns. Demoted twice, once for buzzing a German convoy too low to dodge flak, again for breaking formation to chase a Focke-Wulf that had his wingman's tail. He carried the scars of bureaucracy's blind spots, a jagged shrapnel line across his left cheek from a 1941 bailout, a dog-tag necklace etched with names, Tommy Hale, Eddie Voss, lost to the manual. Reynolds didn't hate the war. He hated the waste. War rewards those who think faster than the manual. He'd mutter in the officer's mess, nursing a watered-down scotch while others pored over sanitized after-action reports. His file labeled him reckless independent, but his kill tally, 17 confirmed, 3 probables, spoke of instinct honed in the crucible. Now, as tactical advisor to the 107th Fighter Group at Debden, he watched American greenhorns parrot the 1942 Air Corps Field Manual, fly high, fly wide, die predictably. The crisis peaked on March 17th. Target, Bremen. The Focke-Wulf factories that birthed the Luftwaffe's fangs. 300 bombers lifted off at 700, escorts peeling off at the Dutch coast per doctrine. Reynolds led Blue Flight, 4 P-47s, heavy with drop tanks and frustration. His wingman, Lieutenant Marcus "Brick" Talbot, a Philadelphia kid fresh from flight school, gripped the stick like it was a lifeline. Brick was loyal to a fault, the kind of man who'd follow you into hell, but whisper prayers about courts-martial the whole way. They hit the rendezvous at 22,000 feet, the bombers a glittering stream against the overcast. Reynolds scanned the horizon through his gun sight, the Thunderbolts 850 calibers humming in their bays, no contacts, yet. Then the call crackled over the radio, Colonel Archer's voice from command, clipped and commanding, all escorts, maintain altitude. Repeat, high cover only. Do not engage below 15,000 unless directly threatened. Archer was the antagonist in human form, West Point 32, a desk pilot who measured success in tidy formations, not enemy graves. To him, valor was conformity, deviation, a crack in the hierarchy. Reynolds keyed his mic, jaw tight. Copy that, Colonel, but if they come in low, we're sitting ducks up here. Stick to the plan, Major. That's an order. The bombers pressed on, flak blooming like black orchids below. Then the wolves arrived. Me-109s, sleek and venomous, erupting from clouds at 12 o'clock low. Not the wide sweeps of Doctrine's nightmares, but a coordinated stab, head-on passes that exploited the bombers' blind spots. Turmoil erupted. Bandits, 12 o'clock low, a bomber gunner barked. Tracers stitched the sky, orange threads tangling in the gray. The 91st Bomb Group took the brunt. B-17 shed wings like autumn leaves, crews bailing into the slipstream, chutes blooming against the piers. One fortress, Memphis Bell's sister ship Yankee Doodle, absorbed a 20mm burst to the cockpit. It yawed left, engines coughing black smoke, then nosed into a flat spin. 27 bombers in the first hour, each a gut punch to the formation. Reynolds watched from his perch, fists white on the yoke. There it is, the manual's gift, a clear shot at our backs. Blue flight, form up on me, he growled, throttling back. We're going in. Brick's voice spiked with alarm. Hawk, that's a negative. Archer's orders. Orders get men killed, Brick. Follow or RTB. Your call. The Thunderbolt snarled down, diving through the bomber stream at 400 miles per hour, props chewing air. Reynolds led them into the flak corridor, a no-man's land of bursting shells where shrapnel pinged off armor like demonic hail. Doctrine forbade it. Too low for parachutes, too tight for evasive turns. But low meant cover. The bombers' own guns could rake the attackers if escorts plugged the gaps. They dropped to 8,000 feet, weaving between the fortresses like threads through a loom. Reynolds banked hard left, his P-47's wingtip brushing a B-17 stabilizer, close enough to smell the exhaust. 109 flashed past, lining up on a limping Liberator. Reynolds snap-rolled, guns barking in a 200-round stutter. The German's canopy shattered. The fighter cartwheeled into a bomber's prop wash, erupting in a fireball that lit the underbelly of the clouds. Splash one, Brick whooped, his own burst clipping a second Me's tail. The squadron tightened instinctively. No wide boxes now, but a predatory knot 500 yards across, engines sinking like heartbeats in the din. They flew inside the formation, not above it, shadowing the bombers' bellies, forcing attackers to overshoot into the crossfire of ball turrets and waist guns. The Luftwaffe faltered. Aces who thrived on predictability met chaos. Escorts popping from blind spots, tracers crisscrossing like a net. One German pilot, vectoring in for a stern chase, found Reynolds on his 6, verdammte Schatten, before .50 cal slugs turned his cockpit to ruin. The raid's tempo shifted. Bombers, bloodied but bolstered, pressed the target. Payloads rained on Bremen's docks, secondary explosions blooming like vengeful flowers. By rally point, the stream reformed. Of the 27 doomed, only 3 more fell. Reynolds' flight accounting for 7 kills, assists on 5. They nursed the survivors home, low over the channel to dodge stragglers, oxygen masks frosting in the chill, gun barrels glowing cherry red from sustained fire. Thorpe Abbott's tower lit up as they wheeled in. Blue flight, cleared to land. Welcome back, gentlemen. But the debrief was a storm. Colonel Archer waited in the map room, face thunderous under the harsh fluorescence. Intelligence officer Captain Eleanor Shaw hovered at the periphery, a sharp-eyed New Yorker with a ledger full of lost tallies, her uniform crisp despite the ink stains on her cuffs. She tracked the numbers no one wanted. 1,200 airmen gone in 3 months, crews averaging 14 missions before the Reaper's draw. Reynolds strode in, flight suit unzipped, the scent of burnt oil clinging like accusation. We brought him home, sir. Every one. Archer's eyes narrowed, jabbing a finger at the blackboard scrawl. Engagement altitude, 7,500 feet. Formation spacing, unauthorized. You broke every rule in the book, Major. Dived into flak, breached the stream. That's not escort, that's suicide. It was salvation, Colonel. Those boys up top, they were target practice. Down there, we were teeth. Brick shifted uneasily beside him, helmet under arm like a shield. Sir, with respect. The bandits pulled off after we tightened up. It worked. Archer's laugh was bark dry. Worked? You call 7 kills luck? This isn't a rodeo, Reynolds. It's a war machine. You just threw sand in the gears. He turned to the adjutant. Ground the 107th. Full investigation. Insubordination carries weight. Court-martial weight. Shaw stepped forward, voice level as a bomb sight. Sir, if I may, the data from Bremen shows an 82% reduction in losses post-engagement. Major Reynolds' vector plugged the ventral blind spot. Archer waved her off. Data? This is discipline, Captain. Without it, we're no better than the enemy. As the room emptied, Reynolds lingered, staring at the mission map. Bremen's red X now smudged with fresh ink. Grief isn't a tactic, but it's a teacher. Shaw approached, ledger tucked under arm. They're wrong, you know. Numbers don't court-martial. He met her gaze, the first crack of alliance in the frost. Then maybe the book's wrong. Outside, the squadron dispersed under sodium lamps, P-47s squatting like scolded hounds on the hardstand. Brick clapped Reynolds' shoulder, voice low. "Worth it, Hawk? For mutiny?" Reynolds lit a lucky strike, the flare illuminating the shrapnel scar. "Worth every second, because tomorrow more boys fly, and the manual won't save them." They saved lives by breaking rules, and command called it mutiny. The grounding hit like flak, sudden, shattering, without mercy. By 1800 hours on March 18, 1943, the 107th Fighter Group was a ghost squadron. Mechanics idled with wrenches in hand, staring at aircraft they couldn't touch. Flight schedules went blank. The ops board, once alive with grease pencil grids, now mocked them with a single word: stand by. Colonel Archer's order rippled through the base like a chill wind off the wash, carrying the bite of authority unchallenged. Insubordination wasn't a slap on the wrist in the 8th, it was a fracture in the chain of command, and fractures got amputated. Major Allen Hawk Reynolds felt it first in his bones, a familiar ache from those aft emotions. He paced the Quonset hut he shared with 3 other majors, boot heels drumming on the duckboards, the shrapnel scar on his cheek itching under the stubble. They clip your wings when you use them. The hut's potbelly stove coughed reluctant heat, but it couldn't touch the frost in his gut. Bremen had been a lifeline. 7 kills, bombers home. But command saw only the breach. Altitude violation, formation intrusion, disregard for the high cover mandate. Archer's wire to General Eaker's staff was already en route. Recommend disciplinary action. Unit morale compromised by rogue elements. The investigation assembled like a court in miniature. By noon the next day, a 3-man board convened in the base theater. Rows of empty seats facing a projector screen, now serving as a backdrop for Archer's tribunal. The colonel presided, flanked by a JAG major from Alconbury and a taciturn intel lieutenant who scribbled notes like accusations. Reynolds' pilots filed in one by one, helmets under arms, flight jackets zipped against more than the draft. Lieutenant Marcus "Brick" Talbot went first, his broad shoulders hunched, Philadelphia accent thickening with nerves. "State your role in the engagement, Lieutenant," Archer intoned, voice echoing off the rafters. Brick swallowed, eyes on his boots. "Wingman to Major Reynolds, sir. We descended on his mark, engaged bandits at 7,500 feet. The JAG leaned forward. Against direct orders? Yes, sir, but the bombers were taking hits, ventral approaches, no coverage. We adapted." Archer's pen tapped like a metronome. Adapted or mutinied? You breached the stream, risked friendly fire, one wrong turn and you'd have shredded your own. Brick's jaw worked. "With respect, sir, staying high would have shredded more. We got him home." The board murmured. Next came Captain Hale, Tex Ramirez, a wiry Texan with Reynolds' drawl, but none of his patience. His P-47 had claimed 3 of Bremen's kills, barrels still warm when they landed. "It wasn't pretty, Colonel, but it was effective. Those Mies scattered like roaches when we wove in tight." Archer's eyes hardened. "Effectiveness doesn't excuse anarchy, Captain. The manual exists for a reason, cohesion over chaos." Reynolds saved his fire for last. He entered with that loose-jointed stride, gloves tucked in his belt, meeting Archer's glare without flinching. The room smelled of polished leather and fresh mimeograph ink, the scent of paperwork's slow strangulation. "Major Reynolds," the JAG began, flipping through a dossier thick as a Bible. "Your RAF record shows a pattern. 2 demotions for excessive initiative. Explain your decision to ignore Colonel Archer's directive." Reynolds leaned on the table's edge, voice steady as a gun sight. "Simple, sir. The directive was a death sentence. High and wide leaves the bombers' bellies exposed. Classic stern chases, no deflection for our guns. We dropped low, plugged the gaps. Result, losses cut from projected 30% to under 10%. That's not pattern. That's progress." Archer snorted. "Progress? You endangered the formation? Flak corridor at that altitude. Shrapnel doesn't discriminate." "It did yesterday, Colonel. It hit Germans more than us." Reynolds' eyes flicked to the screen, where a looped reel of stock footage played silently. P-47s in parade formation, wheels down, textbook turns. Parade pilots die first. The hearing dragged into afternoon, testimonies piling like sandbags against a flood. Pilots spoke of the dive's terror, G-forces pinning them to seats, the whip crack of near misses with bomber props, but also the surge, how tightening to 500 yards closed blind spots, turned escorts from spectators to shields. Brick admitted his hesitation, voice cracking on, "I followed because he was right, sir. Not because it's orders." Tex added vectors from his gunsight camera, crude sketches showing how low weaves forced overshoots, enemy fighters ballooning past into waste gun arcs. But Archer buried it all. By dusk, the board's preliminary report landed on his desk. Insubordination confirmed. Recommend grounding extension, potential reassignment. The data, gun cam footage, bomber gunner affidavits swearing to the save, vanished into appendices, footnotes to discipline. Eaker's staff, swamped with Schweinfurt prep, rubber-stamped it. Maintain status quo, doctrine intact. Meanwhile, the war didn't pause for inquiries. On March 22nd, the 303rd Bomb Group launched for Antwerp without the 107th's teeth. Escorts clung to the manual, 25,000 feet, wide racetracks, while JG-26 pounced from Cirrus Vales. Losses, 18 B-17s, crews fished from the Scheldt like driftwood. Radio chatter from the stream haunted the base. Eagle lead, bandits 6 o'clock low, God, they're everywhere. Cut off by static, then silence. In the mess hall, survivors trickled in days later, bandaged and hollow, trading whispers of growth. If only we'd had shadows down there. Captain Eleanor Shaw watched it unfold from her intel shack, a prefab lean-to buried in manifests and ticker tape, the air thick with cigarette haze and the clack of her Underwood typewriter. At 28, she was an anomaly. Wellesley grad, cryptanalyst turned loss auditor, her role tallying the uncountable. The airmen who didn't return, the sorties that fed the Luftwaffe's scoreboard. Bremen's data had hooked her. An 82% drop in mid-rate attrition, correlated to Reynolds vector. Archer dismissed it as anomalous luck, filing her memo under P for pending. But Shaw didn't file under F for forgotten. That night, as rain lashed the tin roof like Morse code, she began the quiet rebellion. Under desk lamp glow, she pulled mission logs from the vault, yellowed sheafs of Form 1s, gun cam transcripts, RDF fixes. Her pencil danced, plotting altitudes against kills, spacings against survivals. Bremen's plot spiked like a heartbeat. Pre-dive, 27 losses projected. Post, 3 actual. She cross-referenced Wilhelmshaven. Wide formations, 67 down. A pattern emerged, stark as a gunsight reticule. Doctrine's rigidity was the real interceptor. "They're killing their own with clipboards," she murmured, rubbing eyes raw from figures. Shaw wasn't a flyer, but she knew numbers. They didn't bleed, but they screamed truths. She slipped into the officers' club after last call, where Reynolds nursed a flat beer amid the squadron's murmur. Brick slumped at the bar, staring into his pint like it held answers. Tex dealt solitaire with greasy cards, muttering about brass polishing their halos while we rust. "Major," Shaw said, sliding onto a stool, ledger veiled under her arm like contraband. "Your luck at Bremen? It's reproducible. Antwerp's logs show the same vulnerability, low vectors unchecked." Reynolds glanced up, surprise cracking his fatigue. "Captain Shaw? Archer bury your report?" "Deeper than a sub-pencil, but I've got more. Survivor debriefs from the 91st, gunners crediting your weave for 3 saves. If we stack this?" Brick overheard, leaning in, voice a rasp. "Stack what, ma'am? We're grounded till they hang us. My folks back home think I'm building bridges, not dodging courts." His conflict hung heavy. Loyalty to Reynolds warring with the specter of disgrace, a wife waiting letters that might end in regret. "Stack it till it topples the manual," Shaw replied, unflinching. "I've got a cousin in the 305th. Lost last month to a stern chase. This isn't about one raid, it's arithmetic." Reynolds stubbed his smoke, the ember dying like a kill claim. "Grief's the best analyst." "Then arithmetic it is, Captain, but quiet-like. Archer smells ink before it dries." They worked in shadows after that, Shaw smuggling carbon copies to Reynolds' hut, where he'd pore over them by flashlight, redlining fallacies in the field manual. High cover, visibility advantage. But visibility to what? Empty skies while bombers burned. Brick joined reluctantly, his math from engineering school tracing curves of optimal spacing, 300 yards max, where blind spots gaped like wounds. Tex contributed sketches, P-47s threading bombers, arrows for dive paths that turned defense to ambush. By week's end, Shaw's dossier swelled, 47 pages of charts, testimonies, projections. Antwerp's 18 losses, modeled against Bremen's tactics, projected at 4. A 78% Phantom save buried under Archer's status quo. She coded it Project Phantom, ghosts of what might have been. The raids ground on. March 29th, Kiel, 12 more fortresses down, escort spectators to the carving. In the ready room, pilots scuffed chairs, listening to crackling speakers relay the butcher's bill. Reynolds stood at the window, fog-shrouded runways blurring into memory. Dunkirk's beaches, friends' chutes fouling in the wind. The manual's comfort is the enemy's blade. Archer summoned him again, solo this time. In the CO's office, maps pinned like skins, a decanter of sherry untouched. Eaker's asking questions, Reynolds. Your stunts got whispers, if only. But whispers don't win wars. Concede the breach, take a reprimand, keep the group intact. Reynolds met his gaze steady. Concede? That admits the manual's God. Sir, it's not. It's a grave digger. Archer's face tightened. Watch your tone. One more word, and it's Leavenworth. As Reynolds exited, rain sheeting the tarmac, Shaw waited in the shadows of Hangar 3, dossier clutched like a talisman. He's doubling down, but I've got enough for a trial run, data to force their hand. The major nodded, water beating on his leather. Then we fly it, Captain, on paper first. The truth was buried under paperwork. But numbers never lie. The reinstatement came not as vindication, but as a leash, loose enough to test, tight enough to choke. April 5, 1943. A memo from Vate Fighter Command, stamped urgent and laced with caveats. General Eaker, eyes on the butcher's bill, over 200 bombers in March alone, had skimmed Shaw's Project Phantom dossier, buried though it was in Archer's appendices. Not enough to rewrite doctrine, but sufficient for a controlled experiment. The 107th would fly again, 3 missions, scripted to the minute under observer protocols. Deviate, and the grounding became permanent. Succeed, and maybe, just maybe, the data spoke louder than discipline. Colonel Archer delivered the news in the squadron briefing, voice flat as a denied claim. The room packed tight, pilots in fresh fatigues, shoulders brushing like birds in a cage, the air thick with pipe smoke and pent-up throttle. Reynolds stood at the back, arms crossed, scar pulling taut as he gauged the colonel's frost. Brick fidgeted beside him, fingers drumming a silent SOS on his knee, relief warring with the dread of leashes. Tex Ramirez leaned against the wall, toothpick rolling, eyes on Shaw in the corner, her ledger a silent ally. Gentlemen, Archer began, pointer wrapping the map, red lines snaking to Rotterdam, April 8th's target. You're cleared for limited ops. Escort the 305th on the 8th, 12th, and 16th, 20,000 minimum. Spacing, per manual, 1,000 yards echelon. Observers from the 4th Wing ride shotgun. 1 deviation and you're benched for the duration. His gaze pinned Reynolds. This is science, Major, not salvation. Reynolds nodded, jaw set. Understood, sir. We'll fly the book, with footnotes. The pilots murmured assent, but their eyes said otherwise. In the hangar that afternoon, as armorers slung 50 cal belts into bays, the real briefing unfolded. Reynolds gathered blue and red flights under a Thunderbolt's belly, the scent of 100-octane fuel sharp as resolve. Shaw joined uninvited, dossier under arm, her presence a quiet insurgency. They want data? We'll give it to 'em, layered. Start wide, log the gaps. Then tighten on my mark. Observers won't see the weave till it's woven. Brick wiped grease from his hands, voice low. And if Archer calls it off mid-dive, my gut says he's baiting us. Then we RTB clean, Reynolds replied, clapping his shoulder. But gut says the numbers bait him back, Captain? Shaw unrolled a chart on a crate, vectors inked like veins. First test, spacing. Manual's 1,000 yards leaves 15-degree ventral blind spots per bomber, tightened to 500, and it's 2 degrees, negligible. Log every pass, time on target, enemy vectors. I'll crunch it post-mission. Her pencil tapped a projection. Projected saves, 12 per raid. Brick's conflict eased a fraction. Numbers were neutral ground, no courts attached. The 8th donned foul. Low ceilings over the channel, but the bombers climbed anyway, B-17s clawing through mist like reluctant leviathans. The 107th launched at 0630, Reynolds leading 12 P-47s in crisp echelon, drop tanks sloshing as they rendezvoused at 20,000 feet. The observer, a bespectacled major from the 4th, strapped tandem in Tex's back seat, fiddled with his notebook, pencil poised like a prosecutor. Red leader, this is blue one, Reynolds called, voice steady over the RT. Form up, echelon starboard, spacing 1,000, eyes sharp. The formation locked in, thunderbolts strung out like beads on a wire, high above the bomber stream, a glittering arrow of silver against the pewter sky. Rotterdam's shipyards loomed on the plotting board, flak belts waiting like coiled serpents. No contacts at the coast, but Reynolds felt the itch. The Luftwaffe's rhythm, learned from too many empty returns. Observers, confirm altitude. Affirmative, Major, holding 21,500, textbook. The Major's tone dripped approval, but Reynolds' gaze swept low through the stream's underbelly, blind as a bat in daylight. The wolves hit at the IP, initial point, JG-54's FW-190s erupting from coastal clouds, 30-strong vectors tight as a noose. Not the wide sweeps but dagger thrusts, low and fa exploiting the gaps. Bandits 2 o'clock low 40+, a bomber tail gunner crackled, panic edging his drawl. The manual engaged, escorts peeled into racetrack orbits, diving to intercept but bound by altitude floors. Reynolds led a squadron turn, guns tracking, but the spacing betrayed them. An FW flashed ventral, 20mm shells raking a B-24's waist. Screams over the freak, "Mayday, mayday!" Engines 2 and 3 out. The Liberator limped, shedding altitude as escorts ballooned past in the turn, too wide to cover. Blue flight, tighten to 500 now, Reynolds barked, throttle slamming forward. The observer squawked, "Negative, Major. Orders. Orders, just bought a coffin. Follow or watch." The P-47s contracted like a fist closing, wings overlapping in a 500-yard diamond, close enough for prop wash to buffet, but the weave began. Subtle S-turns threading the bomber's shadows. Reynolds snap-rolled under a fortress, emerging on an FW's tail. Deflection shot, 300 yards, burst stitching the canopy. The German smoked, veering into a ball turret stream, exploding in a geyser of debris that peppered Reynolds's windscreen. Brick mirrored, his Thunderbolt brushing a B-17's gear door. Too close, Hawk. But his guns claimed a second, forcing an overshoot into Texas arc. The squadron pulsed now, not rigid but alive. Engines sinking in the din, pilots calling offsets via hand signals, thumbs for altitude shifts, fists for threats. The observers' protests drowned in the fray. This is irregular, logging deviation. But the data wrote itself. Low weave closed the ventral lane. Attackers committed to passes met converging fire. Escorts from below, bombers from above. 3 FW-190s down in the first minute, 2 more limping for home. The bomber stream stabilized, gunners whooping. Escorts in the weeds, keep 'em coming. Flak bloomed around them now, black puffs bruising the air, shrapnel rattling like dice in a cup. Reynolds' oxygen mask iced at the edges, breath fogging the gun sight, but the formation held, tight, predatory, a shield of snarling radials. By bomb run, the tide turned. Payloads hammered Rotterdam's cranes, fires licking the canals like vengeful tongues. Losses, 4 bombers total, 2 to flak, 2 early stragglers, against a projected dozen. The 107th tallied 9 kills, assists on 4, gun barrels glowing as they rallied high. The observer, pale behind his goggles, clutched his notes like a grudge. Debrief was a skirmish. Archer loomed in the map room, the observer's log slapped on the table like evidence. You tightened unapproved, Reynolds. 500 yards, mid-engagement. That's not experiment, that's sabotage. Reynolds' sweat-salted flight suit unzipped, met him square. Sabotage? We saved 8, sir. Log it. Ventral kills dropped 75% post-weave. Shaw interjected. Ledger opened to fresh columns. Confirmed, Colonel. Gun cams show 3 overshoots. Enemy energy bled into our arcs. Without the Titan, those 4 bombers joined Bremen's ghosts. The observer nodded reluctantly. Irregular, but effective. Losses under projection. Archer's pointer trembled a fraction, hierarchy's fault line. 1 mission, luck again, proceed to the 12th. Same parameters, no more weaves. But the pilots knew, parameters bent under pressure. The 12th to Hamburg, oil refineries belching prosperity, tested the weave's edge. Weather cleared to crystalline, Luftwaffe aces waiting like surgeons. Again the high echelon started wide, drawing first blood. 2 Me-109s picked off strays. Then on Reynolds' mark, contract, 300 yards, weave pattern alpha. Tighter now, the diamond shrank to a knot, 300 yards across, wings near enough to count rivets. The observer protested louder, but the fray swallowed it. FW-190s swarmed, 50+, coordinated from Rotterdam's lesson, higher approaches flanking the escorts. But the weave adapted, altitude pulses, dipping to 18,000, then ballooning back, forcing attackers to guess the deck. Brick led a subflight low, skimming flak at 15,000, shrapnel pinging armor like hail on tin, claiming 2 in a scissors turn that left the Germans tangled. They're dancing down there, A bomber copilot radioed, awe-cutting the static. The formation thrummed, propellers blurring in unison, the rumble sinking like a heartbeat under fire. Reynolds' guns chattered in controlled bursts, 200 rounds per kill, barrels heating to blue as a me dove through the net, shredded mid-pass. Losses: 2 bombers, 1 escort clipped but limping home. Kills: 14. The observer's pencil flew, admissions bleeding ink. The 16th to Emden, U-boat pens, sealed the trial. Storm fronts brewed, but the bombers punched through. JG-26 struck viciously, Gallon's veterans vectoring on intercepts. The 107th started textbook, then wove tight from the first contact. 300 yards, alpha pattern evolving to beta, staggered pairs weaving counter to the stream's drift. Flak hung like bruises, smoke veiling the pens, but the escorts pierced it, low and lethal. Reynolds downed FW personally, the kill a flat scissors that left his bird shuddering, trim tabs fighting the torque. By rally, the stream was whole. 1 bomber lost to mechanicals, 0 to fighters. 17 kills, the Luftwaffe scattering radio chatter intercepted later. Shot in untold, Zuna, shadows too close. Archer's face in debrief was ash. The observer's final log co-signed read, tactical efficacy 92% improvement. Recommend review. Luck's a pattern now, Colonel, Reynolds said, voice even. 3 missions, 29 saves, the weave works. Archer folded the report, eyes on Shaw's charts, green pins overwhelming red. Full reinstatement, but doctrine holds until Eaker says otherwise. It was concession wrapped in command, the leash lengthening by inches. In the hangar twilight, as crews hosed cordite from cowlings, brick-cornered Reynolds, relief cracking his grin. We flew it, Hawk, no courts. Flew it closer than they know, Reynolds replied, lighting up, the flare catching Shaw's approach. Captain, your numbers? She smiled, faint ledger closing like a vow. Irrefutable. Titan works because it's human, adaptive, not automatic. The squadron dispersed under stars, pricking the overcast P-47s, taxing to dispersal like hounds off leash. Discipline's a cage. Instinct's the key. The war's grind paused for breath, but the skies waited. Deeper raids looming, doctrine's cracks widening. The closer they flew, the clearer the truth became. Reinstatement was a reprieve, not redemption. The 107th back in the rotation, but with Archer's eyes like gun cameras on every vector. Mission stacked, escorts for the 384th to Bremen Redux, the 100th to Wilhelmshaven's Ghosts. Doctrine held the leash, high cover nominal, but the weave had teeth now, proven in the trial's blood. Losses across the 8th dipped fractionally, whispers of those Debden boys filtering through the bomber bases. Yet Reynolds knew, fractions weren't salvation. The weave was a bandage on a hemorrhage. They needed surgery. Tactics that turned escorts from reactive shields to proactive fangs. The shadow formation was gestating, born from those cramped hangar huddles where Shaw's numbers met pilots' scars. It started with spacing's evolution. The trial's 300-yard diamond worked in bursts, but sustained raids, 2 hours out, bomb run, rally, demanded more. Fuel was the silent saboteur. P-47s guzzled 100 octane like thirstier Merlins. Drop tanks jettisoned early, leaving reserves for the fight, not the ferry home. Wide echelons burned it in loiter. Tight weaves amplified drag from prop wash, trimming range by 15%. Reynolds' hut became a cockpit simulator. Strings stretched between nails for formations, matchsticks for birds, Shaw timing mock dives with a stopwatch. We can't weave forever, Brick grumbled one midnight, pencil tracing arcs on a napkin. Fuel light hits over the IP, we're gliders. Then we pulse it, Reynolds countered, sketching a hybrid. Start wide for cruise economy, contract on contact, 300 yards for the kill phase, then bloom out for rally, like breathing. In for the bite, out for the breath. Tex nodded, toothpick snapping emphasis, his engineering eye spotting the math. 12% fuel savings if pulses sink to bomber drifts, weaving only on threat vectors. Shaw modeled it, projections on graph paper showing 20 extra minutes combat time, enough for a second pass on stragglers. But the weave's heart was communication. Radio was a sieve, Luftwaffe sniffers triangulating bursts like bloodhounds. The manual's voice procedure, call signs, clock positions, fed them vectors. Reynolds drew from RAF nights over the Reich. Aldous lamps, those belly-mounted strobes, flashed Morse not words. No intercepts, just light, pure, silent instinct. In the shelter, they drilled it. Techs at the projector, beaming coded pulses, short, long for Titan port, long, short for overshoot low. Pilots squinted through goggles, decoding mid-sip of Nescafe, fingers twitching yolks in phantom response. Too slow, Brick protested after a fumbled sequence, rubbing temples. In the soup, that's a collision. Practice makes pulse, Shaw said, her voice the calm in the drill's storm. She'd sourced surplus lamps from a crashed Lightning, bartering with her ration chits. Data from Hamburg. Radio chatter drew 40% of intercepts. Lights, zero trace. By week's end, the codebook swelled. 27 flashes for threats, Eagle for high me's, Wolf for loaf W's, wing waggles for confirms. Fuel limits shaped it too. Codes prioritized brevity, saving seconds on throttle tweaks that bled gas. The first full test came April 22nd. Escort for the 351st Tequil's torpedo yards, a milk run turned maelstrom by spring squalls. Launch at 500, fog burning off the wash as 16 Thunderbolts climbed in loose echelon, 1,000 yards, economical cruise, drop tanks feeding steady. Reynolds led blue, Shaw's plots tucked in his map case like talismans. The observer was gone, Archer's concession, but command's net tightened, post-mission logs audited, gun cams scrutinized. Fly clean, boys, Reynolds briefed in pre-flight huddle, breath fogging the chill. Weave on lights only. No RT till rally. Rendezvous at 22,000, the bomber stream a ragged serpent through Scud. No contacts initial, Luftwaffe nursing hangovers from last night's intercepts. Then, at 20 minutes in, a glint, FW19Es, 25 strong, stacking from anvil clouds at 10 o'clock low. Reynolds Aldous winked first. Short, long, Titan port now. The formation contracted seamless, no words, just light lancing through vapor, pilots reading the Morse like scripture. Wings folded in, 300 yards, the diamond pulsing alive, P-47s threading bomber bellies like shuttles in a loom. The Wolves committed, head-on passes, cannons spitting 20mm fire that zipped past like hornets. But the weave countered. Reynolds ballooned high on a flash code, long, overshoot trap, drawing 2 FWs into a climb, then snap rolled down, guns converging with Brick's low arc. Deflection perfect, 250 yards. Burst ripped the lead's engine cowl, oil sheeting the canopy black. Splash, unconfirmed but trailing hard. No radio cheer, just a wing rock, code for market. Fuel gauges dipped, 38 minutes combat left, but the pulse held, Titan on threat, bloom for reposition, lights guiding the rhythm. ME-109 pair flanked starboard, vectors tight from radio ghosts of prior raids. Texas subflight read the wink, short, scissor low, dropping 2,000 feet in a fuel-sipping glide, engines throttled back to economize. The Germans overshot into the weave's teeth, waist gunners and escorts cross-weaving fire, tracers knitting a net. One Me cartwheeled, wing shearing on a B-17 stream, the second limped, Texas 50s stitching its tail to ruin. Flak joined late, Kiel's batteries thumping 88mm shells that burst in lazy blooms, shrapnel whispering off armor like gravel on glass. Oxygen masks froze at the edges, breath crystals fogging sights, but the lights pierced it, steady pulses cutting smoke, sinking the squadron's heartbeat. Brick took a grazing hit, 20mm to the wing root, fuel line nicked. But his rock confirmed. Steady. Reynolds vectored him rear, blooming the formation to 500 yards for a mercy weave, covering his leak without tight drag burn. Bomb run. Payloads tumbled into the yards, secondary blasts rippling the fjord like stone skips. The Luftwaffe broke, scattered by the unscripted dance, radio silence, their only retort. Rally high, blooms out to echelon, the 107th nursed home on vapors. 11 kills, 2 probables, 1 bomber saved from a stern chase by a timely light-coated dive. Fuel logs showed it, pulses saved 18% over sustained tight, enough for the channel dash. Archer's audit came at debrief, his pointer tracing the gun cams, vectors unorthodox but kills clean. Lights? No procedure for that, he growled, face etched with the strain of half-admission. Eaker's staff wants explanations, not experiments. Reynolds, unzipping his suit, the scent of glycol sweat-heavy, laid Shaw's addendum on the table. Charts of pulse efficiency, code efficacy. Explanations, sir? Here's one. We flew 2 hours combat, not 1. Lights kept the wolves blind. Shaw backed it, voice precise as a theodolite. Intercepts down 62 cent, no chatter traced. Fuel projections held, we could have loitered 12 minutes more. Brick, bandaged wings slung, added quiet. It felt natural, like the birds knew without words. His conflict lingered, orders ghost, but the save anchored him. Archer pocketed the charts, concession veiled. Provisional approval, but log every flash. One glitch, it's back to benches. The shelter sessions intensified after. Fuel limits, berth refinements, throttle codes, dim for lean, bright for rich, tying lights to mixture to stretch range. The shadow formation crystallized, not rigid diamond, but fluid. Base weave at 400 yards, contracting to 200 on duals, blooming on blooms. Tech's prototyped threading, pairs slipping between bombers like needles, emerging inverted for belly shots, fuel conserved by gravity glides. Shaw's models projected, against 50 bandits, 85% bomber survival, up from Doctrine's 60. May 1st, Wilhelmshaven rematch. The formation deployed full 24 P-47s, lights synced in pre-flight parade, flashes winking like conspirators. Stormfronts brewed but the stream punched through. JG-26 swarmed early, 45th W's coordinated fury. Reynolds' first wink, all Titan, shadow protocol. The weave engulfed them, pulses guiding dives to 15,000, weaving through flak's bruises, guns blazing in light-timed bursts. Fuel danced on the edge, gauges flickering yellow. But the code's conserved, lean throbs on blooms, rich only for kills. A wolf pack pierced once, 3 Mies on a straggler, but Texas thread pair flashed intercept, inverting through smoke to rake from below. The lead exploded mid-roll, debris fouling the second's prop, the third ballooned into Brick's arc. Losses, 1 fortress to flak, 0 to fighters. Kills, 19. Post-rally as they wheeled into Debden's circuit, engines coughing last drops, German intercepts crackled through Shaw's finder. Schatten, Lichter im Rauch, sie sehen uns nicht. Shadows with lights in the smoke, they don't see us. In the shelter that night, lanterns low, Reynolds traced the codebook's edge, scar silver in the glow. Rules chain the hand, bending freeze the fist. Brick raised a mug, conflict thawed to camaraderie. To the weave hawk and the lights that bind it. Tex grinned, sketching a new pulse. Next, inverted threads. Fuel be damned, we'll thread the needle. Shaw closed her ledger, numbers marching victorious. Every bend's a blade now, doctrine's catching up, one shadow at a time. The P-47 squatted outside, props still but poised, the North Sea wind whispering promises of deeper runs. The war's maw widened, Regensburg looming. Big week's thunder, but the 107th flew forged. Rules bent into weapons, shadows sharpened by light. Every rule they bent became a weapon. Big Week was the 8th's reckoning. 7 days to pound German industry into scrap, daylight doctrines all in bet. Regensburg was the crown. The Messerschmitt Bf-109 plant, birthing aces steeds. 400 bombers tasked, escorts stretched thin, P-47s for the first leg, P-38s handing off over the Alps. Command's plan, high cover, wide sweeps, the manual's hymn. But Reynolds had lobbied quiet. Shaw's projections slipped to Eaker's aid. Shadow Weave projected 70% intercept denial. Provisional nod, the 107th flies lead escort, 32 Thunderbolts, but observe parameters. Archer's addendum, no deviations. Or else. Pre-flight briefing crackled with the storm's edge. The hut packed, pilots shoulder to shoulder, flight bags thumping like drumbeats, the scent of ether and fierce sweat mingling. Reynolds stood at the easel, pointer tracing the route. Dutch coast rendezvous, 23,000 feet, then the plunge south. We start echelon, 1,000 yards, cruise lean. Contacts hit, lights on, full shadow. Threads for the deep weave, pairs slip ventral, emerge inverted. Fuel's tight. 110 minutes max combat, RTB on bingo. Brick Talbot, his wing slot locked, shifted. Loyalty forged, but frayed by the raid's reach. 1,200 miles round trip, P-47s at range's lip. Hawk, commands watching. One unscripted thread, and Archer grounds us mid-mission. His voice carried the old conflict, survival's pull against the chain's bite. Let 'em watch, Reynolds replied, scar pulling as he grinned faint. Shadows don't telegraph. Tex Ramirez distributed code sheets, laminated, sweat-proof. 42 flashes now, including triple long for abort weave, RTB hot. Shaw hovered at the periphery, her ledger a brick in her kit bag, radio tuned to bomber freaks for real-time tallies. Projections hold, 85% survival if we thread clean. But Regensburg's flak is hell, 88 stacked 10 deep. Her eyes met Reynolds. Alliance unspoken, grief's shared ledger. Launch at ZO 700, engines bellowed in sequence, thunderbolts lumbering down the pierced steel mat, props carving mist. Reynolds' hawk's talon, nose art a shadowed raptor, lifted first, gear folding with a hydraulic sigh, the squadron stringing out in loose V. Climb to Angels 23, the North Sea a slate below, Drop tanks sloshing full. External 200 gallons for the leg, internals sipping economical. Radio discipline iron, no chatter, just Archer's tower sign-off. 107th, cleared south, maintain formation, observers inbound. 2 staff majors, tandem and trailing birds, notebooks ready for the audit. Rendezvous over Ostend. The stream materialized, a mile-long river of silver. 146 B-17s from the 4th Wing leading, B-24s trailing like burdened mules. The 107th slotted port flank, echelon wide, scanning the anvil clouds for glints. No contacts yet. Luftwaffe sleeping off yesterday's maulings, but tension coiled. JG-300 massing, Gallon's wolves roused. Reynolds' oxygen hissed steady, mask fogging on the inhale, the cockpit a cocoon of gauges and ghosts, Tommy Hale's tag swinging from the yoke. The handoff came at 0930 over Aachen's ruins. P-38s peeled east for Schweinfurt, the 107th pressing solo south, 600 miles unescorted, doctrine's gamble. Fuel bit now. Externals dry by Luxembourg, internals at 60%. Then the sky woke. Radar plots spiked, intercepts vectoring from Frankfurt, 80+. Mi-109's high, FW-190's low, a storm of fangs. Blue lead, bandits 11 o'clock high, 40 mics. The first RT break, observer mandated, but Reynolds keyed lights. Aldous stabbing short, long, tighten now. The formation contracted like a lung drawing breath. 300 yards, the diamond pulsing. Wings buffeting in prop wash but holding. Light slants the vapor, silent commands threading the weave. The wolves struck first wave, 109s diving from the sun, 20mm fire stitching the stream's head. A B-17 shed its starboard wing, spiraling into the Rhine Valley, crew chutes fouling in the downdraft. Chaos erupted, lead group breaking, flak inbound. Bomber calls flooded the freak, static-laced panic. Reynolds led the counter, double short, threads deploy. Blue flight split pairs, Reynolds and Brick, ventral, slipping under the stream's belly like sharks to bait. The weave went deep, P-47s dropping to 18,000, weaving through the bomber's shadows, inverted glimpses of ball turrets winking acknowledgement. Flak joined the fray, Regensburg's outer belts thumping, 88mm shells bursting in lazy black flowers, shrapnel rattling fuselages like demonic maracas. Reynolds' bird shuddered, a fragment dinging the canopy. Close, but the thread held. An FD-190 pair committed low, lining a limping B-24. Reynolds emerged inverted, belly up to the sun, guns barking upside down. Deflection brutal, but the burst caught the lead's drop tank. Fuel bloomed orange, the FD cartwheeling into a fortress prop arc, shearing clean. Splash. 1. Brick's whoop crackled private RT, his own thread claiming the wingman, tracers converging as he righted, oxygen burning cold in his lungs. But the swarm thickened, 100 now, JG2 and 26 coordinating, head-ons and stern chases carving the stream. Losses mounted, 5 bombers in the first pass, pyres dotting the Bavarian hills like accusatory beacons. The observer's freak spiked, deviation logged, altitude breach, abort weave. Archer's relay from command voiced tinny with command's fury. Reynolds ignored it, flashing long, short, hold course, threads cycle. The squadron responded. Texas red flight threading starboard, inverted dives forcing overshoots. Germans ballooning past into waist gun crossfires, 50 cal hail shredding tails. Fuel clawed back. Gauges at 35%, throttle leaned to the ragged edge. Engines rumbling syncopated in the weave's rhythm. Smoke hung thick now, flak's bruises coiling the air like barbed wire, visibility dropping to 2,000 yards. A 109 locked Brick 6, cannon rounds zipping past, stitching his canopy. Hawk. Tally 6. Breaking. Brick snap rolled, but the weave saved him. A thread pair, Tex in his wing, flashed intercept, scissoring in from below. Tex's burst raked the Mi's belly, oil sheeting as it smoked earthward. Clear. Brick. Keep threading. The IP loomed, initial point for the run, Regensburg spires piercing the haze 20 miles out. The Luftwaffe peaked, 150 fighters, a hurricane of passes, radio intercepts later revealing the panic. Die Schatten, Sie weben durch, unten, überall, shadows weaving through, below, everywhere. The stream fragmented, bombers jinking desperate, but the 107th threads knit it. Pairs slipping gaps emerging to rake attackers mid-commit. Reynolds down 2 personally. First a head-on merge, guns trading fire in a 2-second blaze, his P-47 shuddering as slugs punched the armor plate. Second, a stern chase weaving through flak to close, burst cooking his barrels to glow. Oxygen clawed the throat, masks icing solid, breath shallow against the G's. Gun smoke fouled the cockpit, acrid as regret, barrels venting heat that warped the air. A near miss clipped Reynolds' drop tank pylon, fuel sheeting harmless, but the jolt yanked the stick. Hold the thread. Below, the factory sprawled, hangars like beetle shells, runways scarred from yesterday's raid. Bomb bays yawned, 500-pounders tumbling in sticks, impacts blooming secondary fires that licked the Danube's bend. Panic crested as the last wave hit, JG-300's reserves, fresh aces vectoring blind on the chaos. A B-24 took a direct 20mm to the cockpit, nosing into the stream, clipping two sisters in a chain of fireballs. Evasive, brake left. The lead bombardier's call, but the weave adapted, lights pulsing triple short, bloom out, cover stragglers. The diamond expanded to 500 yards, escorts orbiting the wounded, guns fending the swarm. Brick's bird trailed smoke now, coolant leak from a grazing hit, but he held slot, flashing steady to Reynolds, loyalty's mute vow. By rally, the sky wept wreckage, 60 bombers gone, doctrine's toll, but Shaw's projections whispered vindication. Without threads, 120. The 107th tallied 28 kills, 12 probables, every bird homeward bound on fumes. Archer's observers, ashen in debrief relays logged the unloggable, weave efficacy, off-scale, recommend immediate adoption. Fuel logs showed the miracle. Pulses and threads stretching 102 minutes combat, RTB on 8% reserves. The return leg blurred. Evasion climbs over the Alps, P-47's nursing engines like wounded comrades, the stream a tattered banner limping west. Regensburg burned behind, Messerschmitt lines choked in smoke, but the cost etched deep. Crews fished from the Adige, telegrams winging to heartland homes. In Debden's circuit at dusk, wheels touched with sighs of relief, props winding down to ticks. Debrief was delirium, pilots staggering from cockpits, faces black with cordite, medics daubing shrapnel grazes. Archer stormed the map room, observers reports in fist, vectors wild but saves undeniable. You flew rogue, Reynolds. Threads, lights, that's not escort, it's anarchy. Reynolds, unzipping, the tag clinking, met him unflinching. Anarchy saved 60, sir. Threads knit what wide tore. Shaw tallied live, confirmed, 82% denial rate, Luftwaffe chatter. Shatten broke their spine. Brick, slingbound, added hoarse. We survived the chaos, Colonel, because we wove through it. Archer deflated, the report folding like surrender. Eker reviews at 0600, pray your shadows cast long. That night, in the shelter's hush, lanterns guttering low, Reynolds traced the code sheet's burns, smoke charred from a cockpit flash. Instinct threads the storm. Doctrine just flies through it. Tex raised a flask, grim toast. To the weave and the ghosts it quieted. The base slept uneasy, P-47s dispersed under stars, the North Seas murmur a lullaby laced with thunder. Big Week ground on, but Regensburg's echo lingered. Chaos met not with ranks, but with rebellion's knot. The Luftwaffe reeled, aces whispering curses to the dark. They vanished into smoke, and left only legends behind. Regensburg's smoke hadn't cleared before the wolves adapted. Big Week bled the Luftwaffe, 300 fighters lost, production lines choked. But Gallen's aces didn't whine, they whetted blades. Intelligence trickled south. Ultra decrypts, captured gun cams, pilot whispers pieced the puzzle. The Schattenflieger, shadow flyers, weren't ghosts, they were a system. Tight weaves, light codes, ventral threads, tactics that turned escorts from walls to webs, snaring attackers in crossfires of 50 cal wrath. By mid-September, JG-26's after-action huddles birthed countermeasures, loose staffs, altitude feints, radio bait to draw the shadows high. But one man saw deeper. Oberleutnant Otto Meissner, the eagle of the Ruhr, 48 kills etched on his cockpit sill, eyes like chipped flint under his scarred brow. Meissner was no parade ace, born in Dresden's soot, a glider boy turned Stuka diver in Poland, his wondered 9G's nose a tally of Allied blood. Regensburg had marked him, a near miss with a P-47 thread, slugs raking his tail as he overshot a bomber. He'd limped home, fuel streaming, the American silhouette burned in his gun sight, a raptor in the weave, unyielding. Nicht escort, he'd rasped to his ground crew, wrenching off his mask, the cockpit reeking of scorched hydraulics. Jäger, sie jagen uns. Not escorts, hunters. They hunt us. From then, obsession took root. Meissner's personal log, a leather-bound ledger, filled with sketches, light patterns decoded from flashes, weave projections modeled on string and pins. He flew with a portable RDF now, Tuned to Aldous frequencies, hunting the silence that betrayed the lights. The hunt began quiet, psychological chess unfolding over the next raids. September 6th, escort for the 388th to Stuttgart's ball-bearing plants, the 107th slotted midstream, 24 Thunderbolts, shadows primed. Reynolds briefed in Debden's dawn chill, coffee bitter as foresight. They're learning, boys. Expect feints, high draws to bleed our fuel, then low stabs. Lights stay primary. RT only for bingo. Brick nodded. His Regensburg sling traded for fresh tape on a healed gash, but his eyes held the phrase echo, loyalty tempered to steel. We've holds, Hawk, but if they bait us wide? We don't bite blind, Reynolds replied, scar twitching as he zipped his suit. Shaw's latest, intercepts from Bletchley, smuggled via courier, lay open. JG-26 shifting to staffel traps, loose pairs orbiting to mimic stragglers, drawing threads into ambushes. Patience wins the board, Brick. We protect the Queen. Text distributed flash updates. Flicker long for feint detected, a new code for the mind game. Launch pierce the overcast, P-47s climbing in economical echelon, drop tanks feeding the long haul. Rendezvous over the Scheldt. Bombers droned in, B-17s heavy with silver loads, the stream of vein pulsing south. No contacts initial, the Luftwaffe's hush, unnerving as a held breath. Reynolds scanned low, oxygen hissing steady, the cockpit's green glow casting ghosts on his gauges. They're playing long, waiting for our thirst. The first gambit hit at 30 minutes. RDF plots spiked 20 Me-109s at 25,000, high cap matching doctrines perch. But loose, not the tight stabs but a scattered staffel, railing like wounded birds. Bomber calls crackled tentative. Stragglers, 12 o'clock high, easy meat. Temptation's hook. Reynolds' Aldous stayed dark. He waggled negative, hold weave. The squalped tight at 400 yards, threads dormant, fuel sipping lean. Meissner led that feint, his 109's black crosses stark against the cirrus, RDF earpiece tuned for the lights. No flashes, silence. Bleiben hoch, he ordered, his rotten voice calm as a surgeon's. Wharton often shatten. Stay high, wait for the shadow. He'd modeled it. Americans bit stragglers, threads deploying ventral, perfect for a dive trap. But they held, diamond unyielding, and Meissner's jaw tightened. Geduld. They learned too. The real strike unfolded low. At the IP, 40 FW-190s erupting from ground clutter, coordinated via ground control. Low vectors to exploit the weave's fuel pinch, passes time to the stream's jink. Flak bloomed early. Stuttgart's belts thumping 105mm fury, shells bursting in precise grids, black puffs bruising the air like storm clouds. Bandits 3 low, 50 mics, Texas call, private RT as the wolves knifed ventral, 20mm fire raking ball turrets. Reynolds flashed Titan Alpha, threads now. The diamond contracted to 200 yards, pairs slipping below like divers into murk. His own thread with Brick dove first. P-47s inverting through Flak's lace, emerging to rake FW's belly. Burst stitching cowl to cockpit, the German ballooning into a waist gun arc. Splash. But Meissner's counterbit, his staffel, peeled from the high feint, dove synced, loose orbits tightening mid-drop, encircling the threads like hounds on hares. And May locked Texas wingman, cannon stutter ripping the drop tank, fuel trailed blue, the bird limping as Tex scissored defensive. Psychological now, the chess midboard. Meissner vectored personal, RDF catching a faint Aldous glint from Reynolds' bird. Short long, counter low, he anticipated, throttling into a shallow climb, baiting the thread higher. Commancy Shatten, he murmured, gun sight centering the P-47 silhouette through smoke. Reynolds read it, feints echo, flashing bloom out, hold low. The weave adapted, threads cycling short, blooming to 500 yards to bleed the encircler's energy, guns fending without chase. Bricks burst clipped an Emmy's prop, forcing overshoot. Tex nursed his charge homeward, flashing bingo wing. Fuel clawed. Gauges yellow, engines rumbling ragged on lean mix. The weaves pulse a metronome against exhaustion. Oxygen burned metallic in the throat. Masks webbed with frost. Gun smoke coiling viscous in the cockpit. Bomb run, payloads hammered the plants, fires spidering the Neckar Valley, secondary blasts rippling like vengeful heartbeats. The Luftwaffe pressed, losses mounting. 3 bombers down, 1 P-47 trailing smoke, but the shadows held, threads knitting saves from chaos. Meissner broke off clean, no kill, his log noting, Schotten geduldig. Ward off feeler. Shadows patient, wait for the mistake. Debrief at Debden etched the board's tilt. Archer's audit softened, Eaker's wire praising efficacy, but Reynolds saw the escalation. Shaw's intercepts swelled with Meissner's signature call sign, Adler 1, vectoring traps. He's hunting us now, Reynolds told the hut, map pinned with faint arcs. Not the stream, the weave's brain. Brick rubbed his neck. Conflict's scar. One slip, Hawk, and his pack has us. Slips lose games, Reynolds countered, tracing a projected duel. We play deeper. The hunt intensified. September 15th, Brunswick's optics works, deeper raid, 200 bombers. Meissner struck personal, his staffel baiting with lame ducks, RDF primed. Reynolds countered with hybrid threads feigning deploy, blooming short to lure the dive, then rethreading low. Flak hung thicker, 88 stacking like cordwood, shrapnel pinging relentless. Meissner's guns kissed Reynolds' tail, tracers zipping past close enough to scent the cordite, but the bloom saved. Squadron guns converging, forcing the Oberleutnant's break. Zuna Amerikaner, Meissner growled, banking hard, his 109 shuddering. Too close, American. No kill, but the chest scarred. Reynolds' bird holed in the elevator, Brick nursing a grazed canopy. Shaw's tallies showed it. Luftwaffe denial up 20%, but Shadow's saves held 78%. In Kaltenkirchen, Meissner pored over wreckage photos, P-47 fragments, light housings cracked, his ledger swelling. Lichter Codieren Instinct. Brechen durch Isolation. Lights Code Instinct. Breakthrough Isolation. October crept, raids grinding to Schweinfurt's rematch. Meissner's traps refined, radio ghosts mimicking bomber distress, drawing threads into kill boxes. Altitude pulses to match the weave, energy fights bleeding fuel. One skirmish over the Ruhr, escort for the 303rd. Saw the duel peak. Meissner merging head-on with Reynolds, guns trading in a two-heartbeat blaze. Both birds shedding trim tabs in the merge. Reynolds' burst grazed the Mies cowl. Meissner stitched the P-47's wing root, glycol steaming. Next a small Schatten, the German radioed open, taunt or tribute, before breaking. The squadron adapted deeper. False lights from decoy birds, weave variants, gamma for faint blooms. Brick's loyalty hardened, his calls crisp, Adler inbound, thread gamma. Tech sketch traps in reverse, Shaw modeling probabilities, 65% chance Meissner vectors next deep run. Reynolds flew haunted, the tag swinging, predators hunt mirrors, patience reflects. By month's end the board balanced, Luftwaffe counters claiming 2 shadows, but saves mounting, bombers home in droves. Meissner's obsession mirrored Reynolds, 2 minds across the front, plotting moves in smoke and silence. Berlin loomed, Eaker's hammer, 300 bombers, the Reich's heart. The hunt's endgame beckoned, patience the queen on the board. In Debden's shelter, lanterns low, Reynolds studied Meissner's profile. Snatched from intel, stern gaze, iron cross glint. Every board has a king. Ours is the weave. Brick raised a mug. To the hunter, who'll find shadows endless. The P-47s idled under frost-rimed stars. Engines cold but coiled, the wind off the Zuiderzee carrying whispers of the deep. Every hunt needs prey. Every predator meets patience. Berlin was the abyss, the Eights Rubicon, daylight's deepest thrust. Schweinfurt's ghost still haunted the bases, ball-bearing plants mauled but unbowed, losses that staggered the home front. Eaker demanded payback. The capital raid, 1,200-mile gauntlet, to shatter morale and industry in one cataclysmic blow. Command's calculus, 60% attrition projected, escorts stretched to breaking. But the 107th shadows had tipped the scales. Regensburg's weave absorbed, variance in the manual's footnotes, losses halved across the force. Yet Archer clung to the leash. Fly high first, Reynolds. Weave only on my mark. His voice over the secure line, laced with the brass's dread. Eaker watching. Congress counting coffins. Reynolds felt the weight in his bones as he briefed the hut, lantern light carving hollows in the pilots' faces. 56 birds, full group strength, blue and red flights fused into a single shadow wing. Brick Talbot stood slot right, his Regensburg scar a pale fork on his jaw, loyalty etched deeper than doubt. Berlin's the endgame, boys, Reynolds said, pointer stabbing the map, flak corridors like veins, Luftwaffe fields ringing the city. Fuels razor, externals for out, internals for the fight, 90 minutes max. Lights primary, threads on contact. Meissner's pack will be there. Adler 1 hunts the lead. Brick shifted, gloves creaking. And if command pulls the plug mid-weave? Archer's itching for control. His voice held the old rasp, survival's bargain, but the hunt's chess had forged him. No more prayers for courts, just for the slot. We weave anyway, Reynolds replied, scar pulling taut. Shadows don't wait for daylight. Tex Ramirez distributed final codes. Quad short for Adler inbound gamma bloom, a trap for the hunter. Shaw's projections, smuggled in his kit, 78% survival with full shadow, 45% manual. He's the brain, she murmured sidelong, ledger a talisman. Take him, and the pack scatters. Her eyes held the ledger's grief, cousin's ghost unquiet, but alliance burned steady. Launch fractured the ice, ZO-700 sharp, P-47s thundering down the runway in pairs, props shattering frost into diamonds. Reynolds' Talon lifted last, gear snicking up, the squadron stringing south in loose echelon. 1,000 yards, lean cruise, drop tanks feeding the void. Climb to 24,000, the channel a leaden smear below, oxygen hissing pure now, masks webbed against the bite. Radio hummed commands litany, Archer's observer birds trailing, notebooks primed. 107th, maintain high cap, no premature descent. Rendezvous over the wash. The armada assembled. 300 bombers in 3 waves, B-17s leading like armored knights, B-24s trailing heavy. The 107th slotted deep flank, diamond dormant, scanning the anvil dawn for glints. No contacts coastal. The Luftwaffe's fight hush, Meissner's gambit. Fuel ticked steady. 75% internals as they crossed the Rhine, the stream a silver serpent coiling into Germany's gut. Reynolds' gaze swept low, through the bombers' bellies, blind spots yawning like old wounds. Patience, Hawk. The board set. The storm broke at the IP, initial point, 50 miles west of Berlin, 1,030 hours. Radar screamed, 200-plus intercepts, JG-26 and 300's finest stacking from all quarters, high caps, low stabs, a hurricane scripted by Meissner's ledger. Bandits everywhere, 200 mics, clock positions all. The lead bomber's call, panic cracking the freak. Flak erupted outer belts first. Berlin's Zoo guns thumping 128mm thunder, shells bursting in geometric fury, black blossoms bruising the stratosphere. Shrapnel rained like iron confetti, pinging fuselages, the air reeking of cordite even at altitude. Archer's voice spiked, high cover only, descend on my, cut by the swarm. Reynolds keyed lights, Aldous lancing all Titan, shadow full. The diamond contracted visceral, 200 yards now, the weave's tightest knot, wings buffeting savage in prop wash, engines sinking thunderous. No RT waste, flashes ruled, double long threads deploy. Pairs split ventral, Reynolds and Brick diving first, P-47s piercing the stream's underbelly like lances through fog. Flak thickened, shells stacking to 25,000, burst so close the overpressure yawed birds sideways. Reynolds' Talon shuddered, a fragment shredding his aileron trim, but the thread held, inverting through smoke to emerge, guns hot. The wolves engulfed, Me-109s diving sunward, FW-190s knifing low, head-ons merging in blazes of tracer. A B-17 took the brunt, 20mm to the wing root, Fortress cartwheeling into the pack, debris fouling 3 sisters and chain pyres. Lead group evasive. God. They're through, screams over the freak, static-laced. But the weave countered, threads raking attackers mid-pass, 50 cal stutters converging like fate. Texas pair claimed first blood, and FDU overshooting into their arc, burst cooking the cockpit to ruin, fireball blooming against the pyre-lit clouds. Meissner struck surgical, his Wonder 9G vectoring lead, RDF locked on Reynolds' flashes, the American silhouette his white whale. Adler Eins shot in lead, Mergen, his call to the Staffel, voice ice over the Reich's net. He'd modeled the raid, shadows contract on IP, thread cycle ventral, perfect for a high-low pincer. His rotten flanked high, baiting the bloom. Meissner dove personal, 30mm cannon primed, closing on Reynolds' 6 as the major righted from a thread. Tracers kissed tail, zip zip zip, slugs punching the P-47's armor plate, glycol steaming from a rad. Tally 6, Adler. Brick's private bark, scissoring defensive. The duel ignited. Reynolds' snap rolled, bleeding energy but gaining deflection, flashing gamma bloom, cover me. The weave bloomed fractional, 300 yards, squadron guns fanning to fend the Staffel, while he hauled back, ballooning into a climb that matched Meissner's dive. Head on now. 800 yards closing at 900 miles per hour combined, the world a tunnel of vapor and fire. Oxygen clawed raw, mask frozen solid, breath fogging the gun sight as Reynolds led the pipper. Deflection hell, the 109 jinking desperate. Common sea shatten, jetst. Meissner's snarl, his burst stitching empty air, slugs shattering Reynolds' windscreen spiderweb. Collision seconds away, Reynolds fired first, 850s roaring 650 rounds per minute, convergence perfect at 200 yards. Lead slugs hammered the Me's nose, cannon recoiling wild. Meissner's bird shuddered, engine cowl crumpling, flames licking the prop hub. The German held merge, eyes locked through canopies, predator to predator, before banking hard, a last-ditch roll to shake the tracers. But the weave had him. Brick's threadpair emerged low, guns converging in the roll's arc. Reynolds' final burst caught mid-turn. 20mm rounds punching the fuselage, igniting the drop tank. Meissner's 109 exploded outward, a mid-air nova of aluminum and fury, debris sheeting the sky like shrapnel rain. Splash Adler, 1. Texas whoop, but Reynolds keyed silent. Wing rock only, the board's king toppled. The staffel faltered, panic rippling their net. Adler down, shot and Haddine. Shadow took him. The swarm fractured, aces breaking for home, vectors scattering like chaff. Flak peaked, Berlin's heart-thumping relentless, shells bursting in overlapping grids, the air a vice of overpressure and smoke. Gun barrels glowed blue-white, sustained bursts cooking coolant lines. Oxygen depleted, pilots gasping shallow, the cockpit a sauna of sweat and smoke. A B-24 limped ventral, engines feathered, crew bailing, but Reynolds' thread knit the save. Inverted rake on a pursuing 109, burst shearing its tail, the Me spiraling into the zoo's maw. Bomb run, the stream held, tattered, bloodied, but whole. Payloads tumbling into the Tiergarten's factories, Siemens and IG Farben blooming inferno, secondary blasts walking the spree like judgment. Losses clawed to 40 bombers, Doctrine's shadow, but Shaw's math whispered 120 without the weave. The 107th's toll, 4 birds down, 7 hold but limping, 32 kills tallied in the frenzy. Fuel screamed bingo, gauges redlining, engines coughing on vapors, as the rally formed. High cap for the dash west. Archer's relay crackled late, we've approved post facto, RTB all. Concessions aftertaste, bitter as glycol. The return blurred apocalypse. Evasion climbs over the Elbe. P-47s nursing radials like dying flames. The Armada a funeral march limping channelward. Flak pursued faint, outer belts farewell, but the weave's ghosts lingered. Meissner's pyre a beacon in the mind. Debden's beacon pierced the dusk at 1630, wheels kissing frost with sighs, props winding to stillness. Medics swarmed, grazes daubed, shocks dosed, as pilots staggered clear, faces black with the day's ink. Debrief was legend's forge. Archer loomed in the map room, Eaker's wire hot. 107th efficacy, paradigm shift. Weave standard, observer's log stacked vindication, 200 yards saved the stream. Adler's fall broke the back. You flew through hell, Reynolds, Archer conceded, voice gruff as thaw. But next time, orders first. Reynolds, unzipping, the tag clinking like a metal, met his gaze. Hell doesn't read manuals, sir. Neither did we. Brick clapped his shoulder, grin cracking the grime. Adler chased shadows, found the storm. Text tallied kills on the board. 32 lines, Meissner starred. Shaw closed her ledger, numbers marching home. Every bomber back, your weave. That night, in the hut's hush, Reynolds lit a lucky, ember flaring against the dark. Grief flies the deepest runs, instinct brings it home. The squadron dispersed under aurora veils, P-47s dispersed like sentinels. Berlin's fire a distant glow on the horizon. The war's tide turned, Shadow's doctrine now, but Reynolds' path forked quiet. One last mission, then the records fade. He flew through rules, through fire, and straight into legend. The Berlin raid didn't end the war, it cracked the sky open. By dawn the next day, February 3, 1944, the 8th's butcher's bill tallied grim. 40 bombers lost, 350 airmen adrift in the Elbe's chill, but 260 returned. A 13% attrition against Eaker's projected 30. The 107th Shadows claimed the margin, 32 kills, Meissner's fall a fulcrum that splintered JG-26's spine. Radio intercepts flooded Bletchley's trays, Luftwaffe aces rasping, Schotten, Sie haben das Herz genommen. Shadows took the heart. In Washington, Roosevelt's aides poured over gun cams, P-47s threading flak like shuttles, lights pulsing silent through the maelstrom. Doctrine's architects, those West Point ghosts who'd penned the high-wide hymn, faced the unfaceable. Their manual was a relic, brittle as old acetate. Colonel Archer felt it first, in the command tent's confines where Eaker's wire arrived like a guillotine's shadow. Immediate adoption. Close Escort Protocol 107. Provisional credit, 107th FG. No fanfare, just a memo stamped classified, vectors redrawn from Reynolds' after actions. 200-yard diamonds, Aldous codes appended as supplemental signaling. Archer paced the duckboards, sherry decanter untouched, his pointer now tracing concessions. "They'll rewrite the book with your ink, Reynolds," he said in the private call, voice gruff as gravel. "But heroes don't get parades. Not when the lesson's the star." Reynolds, in his hut with the squadron's remnants, Brick nursing a bandaged hand, Tex sketching idle weaves on a napkin, took the wire without triumph. The scar on his cheek pulled taut as he scanned the protocol's fine print. Tactical evolution per 107th trials. Attribution, group aggregate. No names, no hawk. Grief doesn't seek statues, it seeks silence. "They take the weave, we take the wings," he murmured, folding the paper like a kill claim denied. Brick leaned in, his Philadelphia drawl softened by the raid's forge. "Worth it, Hawk, for footnotes?" "Worth every hole in the hide," Reynolds replied, lighting a lucky, the flare catching the dog tag's etch. "Tommy, Eddie, now Meissner in the mine's tally. We flew for the boys behind us, not the brass." Tex nodded, toothpick rolling. "Shadows don't need spotlights, just the dark." The disbandment came swift, surgical. Eaker's efficiency, absorbing rebels without residue. By mid-February, the 107th Fighter Group dissolved on paper. Pilots reassigned to the 4th and 357th, birds ferried to new squadrons with noses repainted, weave codes folded into the field manual's Annex A. No ceremony, no citations pinned under sodium lamps. Brick drew instructor duty at Millville, his conflict resolved to quiet pride, teaching greenhorns the pulse he'd once feared. "Tell him the truth, Brick," Reynolds said at the railhead, gripping his shoulder, the train's steam veiling their goodbye. "Rules save ink, instinct saves lives." Tex shipped to the 78th, strafer wing, low-level hedge-hopping over Normandy prep, his threads evolving to tank-busting runs. "Keep the lights low, Tex," Reynolds grinned, clapping his back. Berlin was just rehearsal. Shaw transferred to Schaeff Intel, her ledgers seeding the air campaign's spine. Schweinfurt's rematch in March, losses halved again, her projections the silent architect. She slipped Reynolds a parting memo. "Your numbers flew home 1,200 souls. Keep counting." No romance in the ink, just alliance's echo, grief shared, turned to graph. Reynolds himself vanished cleanest, a transfer to special projects, the file stamped restricted, his logbook closing mid-mission. Berlin rally, RTB 1630, whispers pegged him to the Pacific, Eagle squadrons loaned east Spitfire redux over the Marianas, but no confirmation surfaced. Post-war searches turned cold, no Texas Ranch obituary, no VFW podium tales. The RAF's 71st claimed a consultant in 45, testing jets at Farnborough, but the name blurred to advisor Reynolds, scar unmentioned. Legends don't archive, they aerate. By 1946, as the Berlin airlift droned coal over the wall, his shadow lingered only in tactics. Close Escort Protocol 1 and 7A, standard from Korea to the Falklands, its preamble a ghost line. Adaptive formations per combat innovation, 1943-44. The myth of the shadow flyers seated in the cracks, bomber crews' mess hall yarns, Luftwaffe POW interrogations pried loose in Stalag Luft 3. Die Schattenflieger, a captured ace rasped to his Yale guard, sketching weaves on a napkin smuggled out. They flew not above but within, like wolves in the herd, lights in the dark, silent as death. The tale metastasized. Yank pilots in the 8th swapping stories over PX beers, German radio logs archived in Berlin's rubble, frantic calls for Meissner's fall, Schattenweben, der Führer is blind, shadows weave, the leader is blind. By VE Day, the whispers crossed fronts, Galland himself in his Nuremberg cell nodding to a scribbled query. Ja, the Americans broke form and broke us. Post-war, the echoes amplified faint. 1950s Air Force manuals cited 107A sans origin, vectors taught at Randolph Field as evolved doctrine. A 1962 Aviation Week profile on escort tactics footnoted, anomalous group, 1943, but no names surfaced. Classified till the 80s when declassified gun cams hit the Smithsonian reels. There, in grainy loops, the weave danced. P-47s contracting through flak, Aldous winks piercing smoke, a B-17's belly gunner crediting the save. Aviation buffs pieced it. Online forums in the 90s dubbing them the Ghost Squadron. Fan sketches of shadowed thunderbolts threading pyres. The 20th century polished the myth to hologram. Drone sims at Nellis ran 107A variants, instructors invoking the rebels who rewrote the rules. A 2015 History Channel doc, Sky Shadows, Defiance over the Reich, reconstructed Berlin with CGI, Reynolds Talon merging Meissner, Tracers Eternal. Interviews with Brick's son, now 82, voice cracking. Dad said Hawk flew for the forgotten, the ones the manual left low. Tex's grandson, a Predator pilot, added, "Threads aren't tech, they're instinct. Berlin proved it." Shaw's ledgers, donated to the Air Force Historical Research Agency, drew scholars, theses on tactical defiance as doctrine, citing her projections as the weave's spine. Even the Luftwaffe's remnants honored it quiet. The 2005 JG-26 reunion in Bonn, gray aces under banners, raised glasses to the worthy foe. Schatten, ihr habt uns gelehrt. Shadows, you taught us. Meissner's ledger, recovered from a crash site, toured museums, sketches of light codes, weave models pinned with string, his final note, Der Schatten fliegt schneller als Regeln. The shadow flies faster than rules. Reynolds, End stayed myth's veil, no grave marked, no obit in the Austin paper. Whispers pegged a 72-yacht mishap off Galveston, or a quiet fade in Colorado's high desert, mentoring crop dusters with old weave tales. The truth, buried with the manual's ghosts. But his philosophy endured, etched in every modern brief. War rewards those who think faster than the book. From F-16s over the Gulf to F-35s in the Pacific, 107A pulses. Tighten on contact, lights for the weave, instinct over ink. In the end, the 107th didn't win the war. They rewired it. Bomber streams came home whole. The Reich's factories choked not by bombs alone, but by the shadows that guarded the fall. Flak smoke hung like old bruises, gun barrels cooled to silence, engines synced no more. But the lesson thrummed eternal. Hierarchy builds machines, rebellion flies them true. They broke formation rules and became the shape of victory. If you love stories of tactical rebellion and aerial innovation, subscribe for more hidden chapters of WWII history.